What up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the SoleSavy podcast. These are my favorite. I like breaking news, call some homies, get them on the pod, and talk about what's going on because it's usually exciting and fun to just break it down live. Jared, Kenneth, how are you guys doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Doing great.
For the people who are not familiar with you guys, give us a quick breakdown of who you are, what you do, and we'll dive in.
Sure. So Jared and I are the co-authors, co-creators, and professors of SneakerLaw. SneakerLaw is the first educational book about the sneaker business and platform.
So we are here today to talk about the Nike and StockX lawsuit. It started out around NFTs, and then the news broke out last night that Nike caught StockX, I guess, red-handed by selling fakes. How they got to that, how they managed to do it is unknown to us, but it's making the rounds. So I want to get your guys' just initial reactions to the claim.
Yeah, well, let me just first, explain procedurally how this all came about, right? So normally when you file a complaint, the other party has time to answer that complaint, and StockX did answer the complaint. And then some time has gone by since that's all happened. So I think March 31st is when StockX filed their answer. Now, typically, in order to amend the complaint, they have to ask for permission from the other side. Now, StockX must not have said, yeah, sure, you can just add a counterfeiting claim here. So they have to ask for permission from the court, which is called getting leave from the court to amend the complaint. So that's what was filed yesterday. It was a motion. It was a notice of motion and a memorandum of law requesting that the court specifically grant permission to amend the complaint to add these new claims of counterfeiting and what was the other claim that they added? False advertising. So
right.
So these two claims are unique and new. They have nothing to do with NFTs, but they're tangentially related. And I'll let Jared go into some more detail on the counterfeiting aspect of it.
Right. And just to make sure I understand, they haven't technically yet filed a lawsuit for that. They're asking for the permission to add that from the court, and that's how we found out about it yesterday.
Correct. And StockX will have a chance to oppose that motion, after which time Nike will then get a chance to reply to their opposition. So it's going to take some time. Then the judge has to rule on the motion before any of this can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really crazy claim to bring against a company like StockX. I mean, their bread and butter is authentication. And, outside of the legal claim, I mean, selling counterfeits is a huge cause of action, and you could get in a lot of trouble for it. But let's talk about potential harm to StockX's brand. I mean, if Nike's calling into question, and Nike and Jordan, is the prime sellers for StockX, I would imagine that. And I think there were some actual numbers in the complaint. I can't remember what the numbers were, but they make up most of their sales. If they're calling into question the authenticity and whether their sneakers are actually legit, then I think there's a lot of residual effects that are going to happen with StockX where people aren't going to feel comfortable, and they're going to go to other mediums when they look to resell or buy sneakers, of course. So I think that's really the important thing. I suspect that this case is going to settle, because most cases settle. I don't really think it's going to go the distance. So people won't really get a definitive answer about the authenticity claim. But again, I mean, a brand like Nike saying that, I think it's going to have a lot of ripple effects for the company.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Nike does not play when it comes to counterfeiting goods, and they know what goods are authentic or not. It's not like having some person on the payroll at StockX authenticating who might have some expertise in sneakers. These are the people that manufacture them. So there are certain tell-all signs that they can authenticate that no one else in the marketplace knows. In fact, we have some good friends that work for anti-counterfeiting law firms that represent Nike, and they know things that they're not even allowed to tell the general public about how to authenticate a real pair of Nike. So this is a serious claim, and Nike takes these sort of things seriously. They could ostensibly shut down the entire platform if there's a significant claim of counterfeit goods being sold here.
And I guess I'll just point to, like, it's not just a StockX problem, right? Does this put GOAT, eBay, Grailed, I don't know, Posh, every marketplace in the world that handles sneakers, does this put them at risk? Do they have to rethink how they market and authenticate? Will there be effects outside of just this for StockX?
I mean, I think so. I'm sure we've all seen the videos of the eBay authenticator, like, looking at the off-white one.
Smelling them.
Yeah.
Like that and alone is a little bit of comedy. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to bring a lot of attention to the process as a whole, to all these companies. So they're all going to address it. I think without doubt that's going to happen.
I mean, the one defense to counterfeiting is, if you didn't have knowledge that the goods were counterfeit. And I think it's really hard for StockX and some of these companies that claim to have guarantees for authentication that they didn't know that some of these products were coming through their doorway, and leaving out, the logistics route. So it's going to be tough. And like Jared said, they're going to have to all look at their policies and their practices about how they're reselling sneakers and what they're doing to authenticate them. And you would think the brand would want to be part of this, to make sure that these companies are compliant, but not when they're suing each other.
I think it's interesting that StockX said Nike's claims were baseless, but didn't deny they sold them fake sneakers. Right. There's obviously every word that was issued in that statement was carefully thought through. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, first of all, they took a real shot at Nike by saying that Nike's own executives and employees have both bought and sold shoes on StockX. I mean, that may be true. It still doesn't excuse selling of counterfeits. I'm sure if there were sales and purchases made by Nike execs, and I think they're alluding more to the sales than the actual purchases. But if there were sales by, Nike products, I guarantee that they were legitimate if they were coming from Nike staff. But, I think they tiptoed around it nicely because it's probably true. There's some stuff that's fallen through the cracks.
I think it's interesting what they said about Nike employees, because I'm under the understanding, and you guys can correct me wrong if you have knowledge of that I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Nike employees cannot sell Nike sneakers at all. Like they cannot sell it anywhere, period. So StockX saying that, are they not violating their own privacy terms and just conditions around people's information and what they do with it? I'm genuinely, I don't understand it. So I'm curious.
Well, on the Nike side, if that's the case, that sounds right. It's in their employment agreement, and the employees are violating that agreement in any terms, maybe an employee handbook where it states something like that. So there's that side of it. But on StockX's side, they didn't specifically name anybody. So I think it would be hard to bring any claim against them that they're divulging any personal information or anything like that.
Right. And
we remember the case with the VP that had to resign from Nike, where his son was moving massive units of Nike sneakers. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to me to know that some Nike executives or staff members have supplemented their wages with sales of legitimate product.
Do you guys have any additional thoughts on what happens next with the counterfeit claim? I'm already forgetting the second claim around marketing. What do you think happens next? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think StockX will oppose the motion if it chooses to do so, which I think it will. And then Nike will then have an opportunity to submit a reply to that opposition. And then the court will have to rule on the motion, either grant or deny Nike's request. But I think as a whole, this is just the beginning with NFTs and the metaverse. You mentioned the Birkin bag. So there's
Birkin, yep.
Yeah, Hermes is already in a fight about that with Birkins as NFTs. And as more and more brands are applying for and registering trademarks in that space, they're going to protect their intellectual property from third-party infringement. So I think we'll have to see what the future holds, but it's going to be an exciting one, at least for SneakerLaw. So
from the law perspective.
Yeah, we love this stuff. I'll just add by saying whether Nike's successful in amending the complaint or not, or getting the court's permission to amend the complaint or not, they can always file a brand new lawsuit for counterfeiting and false advertising against StockX. Like nothing's going to, we've seen, and I'm representing a case against Nike right now, that Nike doesn't stop if it needs to, file lawsuits, and they've been all over it lately. So I think StockX should be very concerned about its sales practices and being gutted open and audited to see how many actual fake products come in through that door. Hopefully it's not many.
Jared, Kenneth, guys, I appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us and giving us some wisdom and your insights on everything. Where can the people find you? Where can they get the book? Let's make sure we do a plug.
Yeah, definitely. So SneakerLaw.com. You can also buy on Amazon and at SneakerLaw. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Twitter is actually SNKRLAW. We're not as active there, but holler at us. Love to chop it up. Thank you, DP.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. This was always good.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Just be ready for the bat signal when the counter claims come through. We're just going to keep doing this if there's any spice that we need to break down for the people.